Good day and welcome. My name is Christian Lander, and thank you for taking the time out to join us here today on our continuing experiment into what is not the rabbit hole that is reality. This is our, as I said, it's a continuing experiment, so it allows us to have a little bit of an open format to try some different ideas on what we'd like to put to the show, and also to have a new arrangement in the studio, try some new lights and so on, and allow us a little bit of a freedom to play. And of course, as we've been progressing this, I've been playing around with some art styles and different logos. And here in the studio, I have, as you can see, I have this quite rather large back screen here mounted onto the wall. Let's just move into shot. You can have a look as well. The downside is I have to lean back just a little bit, or move my chair a little bit to the right, in order to get into shot for that. So, woo! Yeah, you would say, as Dan from Street Fighter once said, and well, I'm going to keep it on this camera for now. If you're wondering, as that background picture just there, that is the Citadel from the video game. In fact, from a game called Mass Effect, produced by a company called BioWare. I think it's a really interesting perspective shot, because throughout the entire game, this artwork was produced after the game came out by the game developers. The centre ring there, as you can see, is where the central government, the council, presides over the known galaxy. And those protrusions, those arms up there, represent where the industrial and the residential districts are. And obviously those arms open up or indeed close up for defensive and offensive purposes. And I really think it's a really interesting perspective, and it makes its presence known as my background. But that being said, I have been playing around with graphical backgrounds to create for the Rabbit Hole This Reality Radio Show. And in fact, I might as well show you one. In fact, let's just I don't know. I've got to. What if I showed you what the original logo of the show used to be? Because it's kind of dated, it's kind of bad, but you know, it was an interesting start. Here we are. I'll just switch to that screen. That was how it once looked. You know, I took what logo? What font is that? That's Guild TM, I think it's called. Sans Guild, something like that. Guild Sans. There we are. See, it came to me eventually. Let's just knock that off for a second. So that's what we kind of first started. Now, of course, the logo has evolved over time. It evolved the entire time around the first season, and how it ended up. In fact, let's just show you what it looks like now. Let's just skip ahead. Let's skip ahead to what it is today. And this is what I've created for the show, and have a quick look at that. So the Rabbit Hole That Is Reality radio podcast, to engage, to inform, and to inspire. And that icon logo in the centre, that circle, that sphere, obviously represents the rabbit hole. And in fact, that picture there did, in fact, exist to be once a genuine picture of a rabbit hole. And I actually put a camera into a rabbit hole and actually had it took a picture out at a 10-second delay. Of course, over time, that logo changed, I morphed it, I rotated it, and to the image that you see today. And it kind of has that nice modern style look to it. So that's what the Rabbit Hole The Reality logo looks like. So onward and upward into our show today, into our continuing piece. And I think, really, the way we used to do the show, as a format for what was Season 1, we would kind of cover some news stories, right? And then we'd have a feature, or whether it would be an interview, and then we'd kind of fade off into some fatigue stuff. So that means the audience is always left with a smile. There was a purpose, and there was a play to the format. And we're kind of going to repeat that format here today. So I'm going to roll through some stories. Now, the feature, the articles today, we're perhaps going to leave that bit slightly out for that section, because in the future episodes, I've got some really great interviews lined up for coming guests and coming episodes. And I've got a lot of people actually calling me and messaging me now, so some really good stuff going to be coming up. I'm not going to give too much away, but you certainly are going to enjoy them. So let's just roll into our first story that caught my attention over the last few weeks. Now, it's one that really affects my workplace right now. I can't really say where I work because it'd be unfair for me to do so, but our workplace is having a large layoff of work crew, of colleagues and staff, as the company manages to adapt to an ever capitalist growing system. As such, what that means is, let's take people away, let's make the colleagues who are there take on more jobs because, guys, they're not working very hard. We need to make more money, as is always the case with most workplaces. So, but everyone keeps talking about automation and how it's taken over our job and our market, and I can't help but feel that I slightly agree with that. Let's just bring my browser up. I'm a good itch from my nose there. How frustrating is that? Let's just bring it up here. So this is Business Insider UK. And it says here, the WF, robots, automation and AI will replace over 5 million jobs by the year 2020. And that seems like quite a long way away, but in fact it's not. We're already on the countdown to less than 4 years to reach that point. And most of that automation is going to happen across Western societies, America, England, France, Germany, but also in the emerging economies as well, such as India and China. China made an interesting statement just before the new year that said that it wanted to replace 25% of its current labour force to become automated by the year 2025. So how much do you think those jobs are going to be lost? Because the way I think the understanding of the economy is that, of course, the economy needs to be liquid. Money needs to be flowing. The money needs to be going into banks, taken out of banks, bought things, going back into banks, and of course the cycle of consumption to make more and more money. Because, of course, governments and companies and corporations and companies and countries are all about the liquidity of money, the movement of money. So, in order for people to buy stuff, right, people need to have disposable income. That disposable income is earned by going to work. If there's no work, or if there's less work, or if there's more specialist work, so less mid-range jobs, less low-range jobs perhaps, people have less spending money, people have less spending power, and because of that I think we're going to be rolling towards a way where we don't have any money to spend on things that will be enjoyable. I mean, how do you feel about that? Yeah, so the report was called The Future of Jobs, which was published on Monday, and it talks about work, skills and jobs displacement and how it affects every region and every geographical area. Well, they said that'll be offset by employment growth in other areas. I struggle to know what other areas they are going to be that are increasing. I mean, as such, where I work has been. If you can imagine that there was people talk about robots in the workplace. If you go to McDonald's now, of course, the first thing you're confronted with is not the queue, or not the customer service desk, as it were, where you take your order. It's now, hey, look, here's a massive touchscreen. They do look rather beautiful. Where you make your order, then you go and collect it, and it is actually much faster. I really genuinely believe that, and I've seen that effect. They don't have to deal with the orders, don't have no mess ups because the customer made the order themselves. Also, the self-scan checkouts at the major supermarkets and so on. Another interesting idea that does work. It really does. But you still have to have human intervention, like whether it be for your bags, or whether it be for things like, alcohol purchases and overrides, that kind of thing. But they're not real robots. They're not doing the job for you. That's displaced onto the customer themselves directly. So the work has been gone from a person and has been replaced with the customer doing the job. So that's not really robotic displacement. But it'd be interesting to see what happens next in terms of as future projects. And potentially, every job can get replaced by a person. Think of all the phone calls you make to your call centre. I don't know, say you need to call your telephone company. Press 1 for this, press 2 for that, press 3 for that, press 4 for that. Once again, that's displaced to the customer, as opposed to just getting a voice and going, look, my option is none of those things. This is what the situation is. And the guy, unfortunately, because they've been displaced into call centre environments where the call centre is actually a mass call taker from, 20 companies, they don't really have specialist knowledge about how these services work, other than, you just need to do this. It's more frustrating than it's worth. It really is. So what are your thoughts on that? Will a robot replace your job, perhaps, in the future? Let me know what you think. There's comments below, of course, and send me on social media. Will your jobs be replaced? I hope not. I do think in England we have a bit of a tradition where we like things to be done face to face. There's about people. We like people. We really do. So where are we going to go next? Well, in fact, let me tell you a bit about what I've been up to since I've been here talking to you from Not the Right Hole Is Reality last time. I've done a couple of film projects, and you may have already seen them on YouTube or whatever, and they are exploring the hidden areas of the city, and that's what this series is going to be called. I'm aiming to film at least 5 to 10 of them, and they're short, kind of 5-minute mini documentaries, and they kind of explore those little hidden places of our cities that are, relatively unknown, that kind of have like a history of myths, or they have kind of urban legends or stories attached to them, but they really shouldn't be forgotten, or they're just quite surprising, or simply that people just don't even know they're there. So I was kind of inspired by a friend of mine, and to go and do this. And so here I am now. So I filmed 2 of these little mini documentaries. So the first one explored a hidden tunnel built in the Victorian age, really kind of cool Victorian engineering. They kind of built a tunnel that went from Nottingham's Derby Road through to the hidden village in the centre of the city called The Park. And there's this tunnel there. It's since been built over and it's kind of hidden. But in fact, it's still public right of way. It looks really quite cool. There's lots of erosion going on there. Really kind of, it's quite peaceful actually. It's kind of unique. And the more recent one that I filmed last week was one where I explored all the different alleyways in the main city centre itself, and how they have gone from being what used to be the slums and those kind of like forgotten alleyways. In other words, they kind of resemble the shambles in York if you've seen them. In fact, one of the passerbys that I spoke to also made that eloquent reference too. So you can have a look at that. In fact, let's see if I can bring it up now and you can have a quick sneaky peeky. Yeah, so I think that's a really interesting idea to go do that. Perhaps you've got some ideas and suggestions of some places where I can go. I've certainly had a couple of suggestions this past week, so thank you for those. And I shall endeavour to follow up, and who knows what can happen from there. Of course, we now live in an age, so we're moving through this strange transitional time where it's almost become you're not allowed to say that you don't agree with stuff for fear that you might offend someone. I grew up on Monty Python, and I've grown up on South Park. I like to have freedom of opinion, and freedom of speech, and freedom of talk. And if I don't particularly like someone, I want to be at least be able to take the piss out of it, because we should be able to do, right? Because that's kind of the British thing. We've always been able to. The way we kind of take the pressure off is we take the piss out of it. The common zeitgeist of the day, we take the piss out of it. That's the kind of the way we deal with things, like Spitting Image from the 80s and so on. So today, we have got to this point where you're not allowed to say anything, because if you have offended someone, it's quite likely you're going to go to jail, or suddenly get a fine, or suddenly get a lot of hate mail. So, I'm trying to think of a really good example, but certainly the one I want to come to in a second is very relevant. So, how about just before Christmas, you may have seen there was this little video short, that was about half an hour long, done for an American news network, and I think it was CNN. And it was a guy who's 53 years of age, and he identifies himself as a 6-year-old girl. And I just think, in my personal opinion, because I've got to say it's my opinion, or otherwise I can be considered for liable for not agreeing with his point of view and agreeing with his identification. But no, he believes himself to be a 6-year-old girl, that he now lives that way. He now has adoptive parents who also accept him as a 6-year-old little girl, and all the things that come with that, despite the fact that he's got a wife and 2 children. I just think that happens. He needs counselling, in my opinion. And again, once again, I've got to come back to that protection level. I guess that's the only one I've got. But I've seen there's some really strange transitions that are happening right now. If you do not accept them, you're against them. you're not allowed to have an opinion about it because that itself is offensive to them. Which makes for some really strange, how do you talk about it if you're not allowed to not accept it? Take for instance, and this is really what I want to come to, and where that could lead to next. So this story went live this past week. It was the IOC rules transgender athletes can take part in the Olympics without surgery. And this was put out by the Guardian and the Associated Press. And, well, the way they identifies it, and it does, is the International Olympic Committee medical officials on Sunday said they've changed their policy to adapt to current social and legal attitudes on transgender issues. So what this means is that if you are a male, so if you are a trans female to male, you can compete on the male stage in their particular sports. But that also means if you're a man who identifies yourself as a woman, it does kind of give you a bit of an advantage, doesn't it? Because men physically are stronger, we are genetically, larger, and we have bigger muscle groups, and therefore can compete for longer and have more durability, shall we say. Not to say there aren't some things that women are really, really good at, and they certainly are. But physically, you still have men's dense muscles. I just don't think that's fair. I really don't. But I guess, these people are experts in their particular field. But is it? They've had to do this. Because if they do not do this, they are liable, and therefore they are against people who are trans. They are against people who wish to identify themselves as a different gender. Because how do you not accept it? Because if you don't, it's quite likely you can end up in court. So is it? Like many things, the only reason they're doing it is because they just don't want to go through the legal hassle. It's just cheaper to just go, you know what, you can have it, we just, we're not allowed to say anything, are we? Just going to go with it. But it does bring me on to a rather funny moment. Because we're no longer just talking about trans... Are we? We're now talking about trans species. So, yeah, we're not talking about just transgender. People who identify themselves in the LGBTQI, and there's whatever has been added to that little acronym. If that's the right word? No, it's not. Acoustic. I think that's the one. We also have people who identify themselves as trans species. So, of course, there's a picture there from South Park where a guy identified himself as a dolphin. But just because the picture they're using is from a cartoon, doesn't mean it's not real, because it's certainly happening. People identify themselves, and they do go into some depth about this, who want to change species. They no longer identify themselves as human. They identify themselves as a cat, or a dog, or a horse, or indeed the dolphin. And they are starting to go through the chemical and surgical change needed. Trans species. So does that mean in the future, as we give up our rights and we accept everything that's kind of a little bit... Because you have to, because if you don't, you're considered to be phobic of some kind. So, give it 5 years. In 5 years' time, I predict, I have an ascension, that people who identify themselves as furries will be competing on crufts. No, I'm not shitting you. I generally think this is going to be the case. You get people who identify themselves as animals having to run crufts. So you're going to turn crufts on TV, if it ever still is on TV, and you got people running around going, "Oh, I'm a dog, I'm a dog, I'm a dog," and if you don't accept me, you're trans-species phobic. And you should accept me for who I think I am. I'm going through the process of having fur stuck to my body, and I'm endeavouring to lick my own balls. Are we far away from that? I mean, it's probably not the case at all. We probably are on the cusp of that actually happening. Crufts with people. Hence the reason I went to furries, because that furries just need to be ribbed on constantly. Here's an interesting story that I came across this past week. Now, if you haven't seen it already, there was a Darren Brown special that aired on Channel 4, I think, last week. And it was where he's trying to investigate, is it hypnotically possible for a person to commit a murder just by the power of hypnotic suggestion alone? And I think he's been dabbling with this for quite some time. And because, of course, there was a special, I think it was aired like 2014, where they recreated the confession of one of the killers. I believe it was the killer who killed, not JFK, it was his brother. That he signalled that he saw a woman in a red dress, and then he was suggested to shoot someone. And so he recreated that, in fact, with Stephen Fry, how this person was then triggered by actions, by address, by sound, by passers-by, and as long as they line up in the right order, you'll commit an action because you literally will react to it by your hypnotic suggestions. So this is the story that's the story that came back to my mind when I saw this particular article. And let's just see if I can bring it back up on the poster on the board. Now, where is it? It is. Yeah. So here we are. Let's just change this here. So people can be convinced they committed a non-existent crime in just 3 hours through a site. This is a post on Science Alert, and obviously it highlights the posts and the studies that have gone into this. And it basically is found that statistically innocent people can be questioned in such a way by the police that they can actually be convinced within a time of about 3 hours they actually committed a crime, even though they didn't do it. This is based on findings of a psychological scientist called Julia Shaw from the University of Bedfordshire in the UK, and investigating the possible cause, and found that if questioned in the right way, innocent people will confess. It's the way we fabricate stories in our mind, and our mind, of course, fills in details in rather unique ways, so we can falsely be convinced of things like committing a crime. And she goes on to quote that there might in fact be, well, she says statistically it's about 4.1% of people in American jails are never were there because they didn't commit a crime. I would bet actually it's much higher in reality. It leads an interesting worry, doesn't it? Because the way the brain forges memory, I mean, we can be told something by someone, instantly we then have a memory of it because we've created a construct in our head of from the information being presented to us by said person. And if a person says, I went fishing one day and I had this massive rod, it was blue in colour, and I was there for an hour and I caught this massive perch and then a roach and then a pike and stuff, and suddenly, perhaps, you want to do that too. So it becomes part of your memories, even though the way that other person has illustrated it, you've never recreated. I don't think that's dissimilar along the same process. So it makes you wonder, have people committed and gone to jail for non-existent crimes? And also, how do you think they can be used against people? Are the priests willing to put people up like that if they're looking for an easy put-away? There was a study that I did look for, and I've heard it referenced, and I hate to use things that I cannot show a source for, but it spoke of how when a serial killer is found, they would tie a number of other cases to them, just to get rid of their unsolved case backlog, and that person would reduce their sentence, or that the sentence would exceed their lifespan, or literally just sign off for like favours and stuff while they're in prison. Where was that? It's going to bug me. If I do find it, and I believe I will post that link to that particular study and information in the description below. But it can make you wonder, because we are so eager to put people away, because all of our prisons now, of course, are no longer run by our own government. They're actually run by private corporations for profit, because of course they earn money from the government for having people in prison, so therefore they are in it for the money. There was that judge recently, I believe it was Canada, he was found to be taking bribes to put children away, people into youth hostels, and people who were early ages committing crimes, as like the teen to early 20, to put them away. and he was taking, I think it was like $4,000 a time to literally stitch them up and put them into prison, i.e. lining his own pockets and taking away the life of young people, purely because he could. We really do live in a sick and twisted society. But this particular story, as we said, people can be convinced they committed a murder in just 3 hours. And there's another story, when I read this, there was another story linked to this, actually on the same website. And it really ties in quite well. And it ties into a few other things as well. So why groups of people can remember something that didn't happen? Strange things happen to our memories when other people are involved. If someone else remembers an event in a particular way, for example, and they influence the way that we recall it, such as the story I just mentioned about, say, a blue fishing rod and the fish that they caught in order. And so you activate the transitive memory system. It's complex and comprehensive than any individual's memory, or so the hypothesis goes. So journalist Malcolm Nicholson from Hopes and Fears decided to ask the experts to see if people could really remember something that didn't actually happen. And it really is quite an in-depth article, actually. It's really, really long, and it's well cited as well, all the links and stuff, and the sources are there too. My memories, of course, go back to things like UFO reports, where it isn't just one person who sees it, or they say a group did. But what if that one person only saw it and their memory was then attached to the others? In ghost reports where you go to a haunted house, for instance, and one person has an experience, they tell the others. The others then believe that they experienced it as well. So did the sighting happen? Did the experience happen at that house? Or did a person just make it up and then the others carried it along? Therefore, you have false memory induction, because you told the story perhaps so many times, complete with things that happened to groups that didn't happen. Can we really rely on people's views anymore if this is the amount of fallacy that can occur? What are your thoughts? So I need to raise the vibe, I need to make the kick going on, and because the last few days I've been pretty bummed out. I generally have. It's been my daughter's birthday on the 24th. I've been feeling a bit under the weather. Weather actually is the weather. I guess we're always under the weather. And I need something to make me smile. And one thing that did make me smile was this. And it made me smile. It'll make you smile as well. I'll send it to the main screen here. Send it to the K-Vision here. Let's just do a bit of zoom in on that bad boy. This made me smile because I like things that have a sense of humour. So this graffiti artist tests the patience of his local authority with a little bit of an experiment. And let me just zoom it in a little bit more so you can see that. So this looks like it was one of those electrical substations that you find everywhere. And our little artist, our little graffiti artist, decided to start taking pictures. So after he posted some graffiti there in the bottom left corner of that wall, he's put the word red. Next day, that's some more graffiti turned up. And then the local council came along and rubbed it all out in red. The next day he put red a little bit higher. And then the guy came along again. And it almost appeared to be like a back and forth message. Red a little bit higher. Yeah, covered. A little bit higher. Covered. A little bit higher. Covered. Covered again, rather. So, a little bit higher. And he's clearly testing the patience now. So, our little artist this time decides to write red on the wall itself. So it gets spray painted off with jet wash. Oh dear. So as it says there, pressure wash, paint red. So this is really as a message going from the artist to the guy to paint the wall red, damn it. Pressure wash here. But no, he just painted it over red. No, what about this? No, what about this? So he eventually painted over it and painted the wall as well. Red. Yeah, you went above the line. And then, of course, there's a picture actually of our little jet sprayer himself. And just paint the wall red. Pressure wash, paint red. No, he decided to paint over red. And then there we go. The guy eventually gave up and just painted the entire thing red. Classic. And then, of course, our Our graffiti artist decided to leave one last message. Well then, that's one way to end it. Thanks, mate. It's been fun. You know, only in England can that kind of attitude actually work, but there's actually a bit almost banter left in symbolism. It's great. Yeah. Love it. I absolutely love it. Now, you may well have experienced this. Okay, let's put you in the workplace. Maybe you've got a boss who's a complete dick and shouts at you constantly and stresses you the fuck out. Or maybe you're just at work and you just kind of need to let yourself go. Then this story is for you, my good friend, whether you be a man or a girl, although this generally says male. Let's just jack it over to the big screen. A masturbation booth, that's right, a kind of phone box for jacking yourself off when you're having a stressful day at work. Absolutely true, hitting the high street. These are... This just makes me laugh. So this new story here, this went live in the Metro. Let's just so we can zoom this bad boy up a bit, so you can have a good clear look. Masturbation booth has actually been opened for stressed out guys. So a company reckons it's the best way to relieve it for you, as it says. The time Guy-Fi, New Yorkers now respond to a hard day by tugging themselves off. So the company has now set up a free masturbation booth in the street. That's right, basically it's a phone booth with a chair, a laptop and a curtain, and you make your own entertainment from there. I guess the laptop perhaps isn't going to be fixed in there, or maybe it must be a screen, I don't know. But can you imagine doing this? You know, there you are at work and you're feeling a bit angst, so you just have to go outside and just go tissue. And then, oh, it's good. You go back in the office with that kind of like look in your face. It's like, yeah, I feel good. Yeah, this one. Yeah, that feels good. Yeah. Oh my god, yeah. That's exactly what I needed. Or perhaps you could meet the girlfriend or guy friend, perhaps whatever your thing is, or your furry friend, in the in the phone box thing outside. Like, you can obviously have your fun. It just going to make you wonder about is it indecent? Because you're kind of in a phone box, but I guess it's all sealed off. I guess not. You're kind of doing it public, but you're not. The sounds are going to be heard by the people who go past, right? So how does the police deal with that? Perhaps if someone's offended by it. So as we continue our trip into the rabbit hole that is reality, and of course reality comes in many different flavours. It even comes at you from a galaxy far, far away. Of course, you have to be living under a rock if you haven't seen Star Wars Episode 7 or heard a brief mention of it over the course of the last year or so. And of course, the film is now out there. But this is absolute, utter genius. Seriously, it is. So imagine Star Wars meets the Kama Sutra. The book. Yes, it is real. It's damn real. It really exists out there. There is it's obviously not an official book. And a guy has taken his Star Wars action figures and decided to make a book of the Kama Sutra based in a galaxy far, far away. This is utter perfection, genius. It made me laugh. And of course, there's loads of examples up online. People are now adding more and more and more to it on the likes of Reddit and Facebook and stuff. But these are the ones that are actually included in the unofficial book itself. Let's keep it simple. Let's go with The Force Awakens. Luke Skywalker in his bed with us. Well, here's Force Awakened. This one I did kind of like as well. This was Attack of the Clones, the Clone Troopers. Getting it all in there. A little bit of Jedi gangbang. Surprisingly, it's safe for work. And then you have the perfect man. That's right. You know, Princess Leia Organa and Han Solo. Although of course he's in carbonite. He's perfectly stiff. And of course Princess Leia has her entire fun and happiness to go with that as well. But my absolute favourite, and it's the one that's doing the rounds, it really is the AT-AT doggy style over the back end of a bed. And it and look at that, it's just like, what is that? What is that? It's just two AT-ATs going at it doggy style. Absolute genius. Anyway, I really wanted to kind of draw it and kind of leave it on at a bit of a high point there. So, you know, again, I'm kind of a reduced show today in that sense. I've kind of pulled some stuff together, some serious stuff, some fun stuff, some entertaining stuff, and I'll let it go out with some fatigue stuff and let have a laugh as well. And I'm going to let it go there. So my name is Christian Lander. Thank you for taking the time once again to join us on the experiment that is not the rabbit hole that is reality. And please leave your comments below. I really do appreciate them. I hope that the mic has been a lot better than the last episode. Believe me, this has been absolute frustration. It's now It's now 9 o'clock. I've been trying this since this afternoon. I tried this pretty much all day yesterday. I had lots of issues going on. It's why I really want to just kind of get it done and get it out there and just go, okay, let's just get these things tested. Let's just get it all up and working. So thank you once again for your patience, and I look forward to talking to you in the world of social media and the world of the internet. Thank you very much once again, and I shall see you out there very soon.